Hey guys, it's Tony B again, here to talk about the history of rock and roll. We are on chapter 3. And once again, there will be a playlist, a YouTube playlist of all these songs and some videos for you to check out. So the last thing we covered was the Beach Boys. The best and one of my favorite groups. And now we're going to move on to pretty much making our way to the Beatles in this chapter. And even though this chapter has a whole section on the Beatles in the middle, we're going to skip past it and do all the other stuff in the chapter. And then the next video will be about the Beatles and only the Beatles. So here we go. Today is March 31st, 2020. History of Rock and Roll, Chapter 3. American pop stars topped the charts in the UK with some UK stars as well. But as you can see on page 1 here, that the same chart toppers in the States were one and the same over in England, Sinatra, etc. Rock Around the Clock and Carl Perkins, yep, this and that. And then talking about these Elvis imitators, right, who are named Cliff Richard and Tommy Steele, among others, try to capture Elvis's aggressive stance while retaining the respectability of Eddie Fisher. So in the playlist there are some videos, Tommy Steele and Cliff Richard. So check them out. They're great little timepieces. Tommy Steele, an interesting character. Cliff Richard as well. Pretty good singer. They both had careers kind of as they went along. Anyway, check out those videos. Bill Haley does tour the UK in February and March of 1957, and many future rock and roll stars mentioned having been present for these shows and seen and heard this band. So obviously you can see the influence that would have. McCartney, Pete Townsend, Graham Nash, and others. So there's a video that looks like the very first video here is the Bill Haley newsreel from London, February 57. Very interesting. Please check it out. Tommy Steele, Cliff Richard. Now on to page 3. This cat, Lonnie Donegan, skiffle. Exactly what it says here. Sensitized British youth to American folk music and the blues. That's exactly what it did. Kind of supposed to be equivalent to the jug band thing of the 20s. A lot of it was what you had around the house, homemade instruments kind of thing, washboard, in that vein, bathtub bass or whatever. What happens is the skiffle craze, which lasts for about 10 seconds in the UK, does kind of bleed right into the rock and roll thing, and in the form of everyone had a garage band. Same way surf rock did in the States. Sidebar, this video of, the Lonnie Donegan video, check it out. Englishman trying to sound like American, kind of southerny thing. That song, Rock On the Line, by, as far as I know, composed by Lead Belly. The next video is a young Jimmy Page in his skiffle group on a TV show when he was like a teenager. Jimmy Page, of course, later on member of the Yardbirds and founding member and senior member of the great band Led Zeppelin, who we will get to next time. So, page 5 of the website. Liverpool is, of course, the town where the Beatles came from, and we are going to spend a whole video on them and them alone next time. They were one of the many, many bands in Liverpool at the time, as you can see by this chart The idea is that there were 300 it says 275 bar bands. Anyway, even though it was that busy of a scene, London was still the capital, the musical capital of England. And the Liverpool bands were destined to be bar bands until the Beatles, of course, and then kind of changed a little bit. They call it the Mersey Beat sound because it's on the Mersey River. Similar to the Brill Building, New York City in writing style and production. Slick production like New York City. Big production, orchestra, the whole thing. Professionally written songs, you know. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. A couple of good Liverpool bands besides the Beatles. Jerry and the Pacemakers. This tune, Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying, which is on our playlist here, is just a great example of that whole very, you know, sentimental kind of pop song stylings that were very big in that town at the time. And if you're into Jerry and the Pacemakers, please listen on. Check out some other stuff by them. Then, of course, Peter and Gordon, kind of another Everly Brothers-ish singing duo. Their song on here, I Go to Pieces. And then the Hollies, which are technically they're from Manchester, not Liverpool, but they're in this vein musically with the kind of Brill Building style poppiness. And their song that we have on the playlist here is a live version of their hit song Carrie Ann, also featuring Graham Nash, later on of Crosby, Stills and Nash, on the high vocal. So that's Liverpool, the Mersey Beat sound. Again, we will get to the Beatles later. Page 7 says, and enjoy the videos, guys, if you have time. Page 7 is everything on page 6. Everything on page 6 about the Mersey Beat sound is pretty true. Same thing we just said. Page 7, London Art School Rock, British Blues. Blues, and meaning American music, really influences the scene during this time. And we're getting to the Rolling Stones, that kind of thing. If you read this page, you see some of the names they mention hanging out and kind of coalescing around this sound. This on page and of course at this time, late 50s, some American records began being imported into the UK. Page 8, you see some of these heavyweights in the picture as young men, and a picture of the Rolling Stones. That man in the middle of the picture, Brian Jones, basically the founder and almost leader in the early days, wound up getting fired from the band later, 10 years later or so. Of course, the Rolling Stones do take their name from a Muddy Waters song called Rolling Stone. And I think we're going to listen to them a little bit later. Right now, we're going to get past the Stones and talk about the Animals and the Kinks, two other great London bands, right? Eric Burdon of the Animals. So the Animals are a great blues band. And the example that we have on the playlist is House of the Rising Sun, which is an American folk tune, possibly written by Leadbelly, attributed to him sometimes anyway. And their version is lovely, so enjoy. And then the Kinks, another great London band that are kind of known for getting into the heavier guitar sound with experimenting with the amplifiers, you know, and other ways to get distortion, heavier guitar sounds. And their song on here, you probably have heard it or other versions of it, called You Really Got Me. So enjoy those videos. Page 10, everything they say here is pretty true about London Art School, you know, the blues London style. And then the differences between Liverpool and London. all basically true. The Beatles we will talk about next time. The most influential band probably. And one of our favorites. So now the Rolling Stones, right? Read all about them, etc. This is the London, premier London band, and they are a really, really good blues cover band and a good bar band. It does take them a little bit more time to evolve, and like every band, when they start, it's a lot about cover versions. The Beatles are guilty as well, and every band is, because that's just how it goes. But the Stones' early albums are super heavy on covers, and a lot of American tunes as well. So, in fact, one on the list here is them doing Not Fade Away, which is, of course, composed by Buddy Holly. So that's where they were in the beginning. You can see on page 20, you could see the titles in bold are their compositions, and the other ones are cover tunes. So first couple albums, definitely a lot. Page 21, sorry. And we kind of can, if you listen to those albums through the 60s, you can hear their development, and then they finally get to Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, period. And that's where these songs come from. So listen to Sympathy for the Devil, which is the first track on Beggar's Banquet from 1968. And it's a lovely piece. No drum set, just kind of exotic percussion, more world music kind of thing, Latin percussion and African percussion. And a great lyric if you care to read along. So, that's where they wound up heading, where they become the Stones. And then, of course, the opening track from Let It Bleed from 1969, Gimme Shelter, everyone will remember from every Vietnam movie ever made. And also every Martin Scorsese movie. But it is such a great piece, and it's such an ominous opening, before they even kick into the tune, that it is kind of a telling of what the tune is about, which is, strife. The woman's name who sings the vocal on this song is named Mary Clayton. Mary, like Merry Christmas. Mary Clayton. And she is an African-American Los Angeles studio singer who famously sang that great harmony vocal on that track, and she has a little solo in the middle where she's really going for it. You'll hear what I'm talking about. So please enjoy that. Page 23, Altamont, we know what happened. Death, and the Stones set gets cut short because there's a murder and then other people die. The West Coast Woodstock. And then also on page 23, 24, 25, 26, are you a mod or a rocker? The answer is no one cares. So it was, as far as I could tell, it was just about a style of dress. And I'll say this. The Beatles, this is a sidebar, guys. The Beatles, before they got famous, used to dress like in the biker mode. Leather jackets, etc., and like greasers, like the Fonz. And then they switched to looking more mod, as far as I could tell. Not that I'm an expert. So and the Who were supposed to be the mod band, but they kind of looked like the Beatles were, and their music sounded very, very similar. But the Beatles, 10 seconds ago, the Beatles were wearing leather jackets. Now they're wearing, Nehru. Anyway, sidebar. So the point is that no one cares about the mods and rockers thing. The Who is another great band that comes up mid-60s and goes through some lovely stylistic periods. The songs I have on the list are My Generation, which is kind of a cool example of some almost swinging, almost straight eighth drumming still from Keith Moon, and the song features a bass guitar solo in the middle as opposed to what would be 99% of the time a guitar solo. The bass player, of course, John Entwistle. And then the other song, Bob O'Reilly from Who's Next, which was, I want to say, 1971. It's the first song. And that's kind of a little idea of where they went. Coming out of the rock and roll thing, they went a little bit more into that kind of rock, hard rock. And that's The Who. I mean, if you want to check out Tommy as well, which was kind of the first rock opera, I do want to say that it predated Hair. So now, page 24, the British Blues Revival. The bottom line is this band called the Yardbirds at different times had Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page in the band. Clapton and Jimmy Page weren't in the band together, but Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page were for a time. Jimmy Page started the band on bass. Of course, Jimmy Page, who later went on to found Led Zeppelin. So the idea here is that the Clapton wing is the hard rock wing, the Jimmy Page wing is the heavy metal wing. I don't know, but they both did play with the Yardbirds. And just for fun, let's check out one Yardbirds tune called For Your Love, which is on the list. Yeah, there it is. Not really a band that's going to be remembered for anything musical, but they'll be remembered for having those guitar players come through. And a good blues band, back in the day. This band, the Yardbirds, does, as some of you probably know, morph into Led Zeppelin. That's how it happens. And we're going to spend a whole day on, a whole video, I should say. Miss you guys on Zeppelin later. But for now, let's round it out. And if you want to listen to Jeff Beck, there's nothing on here, but feel free for you guitar lovers out there. Page 31, Cream, one of the original power trios. And this is kind of that thing I talk about sometimes where through the 60s in the guitar playing, you can hear how jazzy it still kind of is. A lot of busy playing. And then by the time you get to the late 60s with guys like Clapton and Jimi Hendrix, it's more about a sustained kind of singing guitar sound that was an evolution, and it's only possible because of the advancements in speaker and guitar, amplifier and guitar technology. And if you listen to a Beach Boys track, you'll hear that jazzy style. If you listen to Clapton, you'll hear the more rock style. So listen to this tune, Sunshine of Your Love, which is on here, the playlist. And think about this. So everything I usually say about how jazz leads to rock, about swing and all that stuff, this song right here, Sunshine of Your Love, is an example of kind of the opposite. It's so heavily on the one of every measure. See if you can tell what I'm talking about. It's pretty obvious in the drumming of Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce and Eric Clapton. So bonus points for anyone who can email me the name of the song that Eric Clapton quotes in his solo on this tune. And then we have this little final thing that says American reaction to British invasion, so that's apparently what happened. I'm going to try to make these maybe a little bit more frequently and get one back to you in 4 days or 5. And like I said, the next video will be all about that great, great band that influenced everyone that came after them, the Beatles. So I hope you guys are all doing well. I hope you're all getting to see these videos. And let's stay in touch with each other. Take care, my friends.